Good evening. I'm Marilyn Perkins, and I'm also with the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin counties. And if you are just joining us, we are going to be featuring two of the candidates that are running for the 4th Congressional District, which geographically is a very large district. There are 5 candidates that will be on the ballot, on the primary ballot. Mr. Newhouse, who is currently in Washington, D.C. and could not be with us, he has sent a representative to read a statement. 2 of the other candidates we tried repeatedly to reach. We sent them emails and phoned them, and they did not respond, and so they are not here tonight. But they will be on the ballot also. We are very pleased to have Mr. Clint Didier.
Thank you.
And Mr. Doug McKinley.
Thank you.
And they will be willing to answer your questions. And as in the first race, go ahead and pass them to the outside aisles, and people will collect them. I just want to make a little pitch for the League of Women Voters. Those of us with name tags that are floating around and helping would love to talk to you about League. We have a sign-up sheet in the back. If you're at all interested in League or would like to receive our newsletter, please sign it. There's some other brochures we have back there. So if you have any time after this forum, we'd be more than happy to talk to you. The gentlemen that are sort of around are from the Latino Coalition, who is and they are one of our new partners, and they are going to be collecting the questions. And then we have people in the back screening them and grouping them to make sure they're appropriate. We ask that questions be focused on issues and not personalities. The other sponsors we have, and that we owe a big debt of gratitude again, as Kay mentioned, is Mike Charbonneau with City View TV of Richland, and John Funfar in Pasco is also one of our partners, and he'll be with us next week. At this time, I would like to invite Mrs. Sharon Brown up to the podium, and she's going to read the statement from Representative Newhouse.
Thank you, Marilyn. My name is Sharon Brown. I'm the state senator for this district, and I've worked with the League for many years, and they do a fabulous job of bringing together these forums. I know it's really very difficult to bring something like this together, and it is great to have civil discourse. It's something that we're really, really missing in this country, and so it's really great to have the ability to come before you today and at least read a statement. And boy, am I glad that I'm not running this year and I just get to be here and read this statement. So on behalf of Congressman Newhouse, he says, "Friends, I regret that legislative business keeps me in Washington, D.C., and I cannot be with you for this forum. I am working hard to represent the values of voters in Central Washington. The size and scope of the federal government has ballooned dramatically, making its way into every facet of our daily lives. This is unacceptable. The government must live within its means. Since coming to Congress, I have co-sponsored a constitutional balanced budget amendment and worked to cut government red tape so jobs can grow, so that local issues can be solved with local solutions. This especially is true when we are confronted with land use decisions. Wherever possible, we must return these decisions to local leaders and landowners who are far better equipped than distant federal bureaucrats to protect both jobs and the environment. The issues that confront the Tri-Cities are unique. One of the paramount responsibilities of representing the 4th Congressional District in Congress is advocating to make sure the federal government honors its moral and legal obligations to clean up Hanford. I take this responsibility seriously. Before I was even sworn in as member of Congress, I toured Hanford and met with leaders, employees, and first responders at the Hanford site to ensure I could effectively advocate for the site. I've had the pleasure of touring the Hanford site and the Pacific Northwest National Lab several times as your congressman, and I meet with stakeholders of both regularly. No one will work harder on this issue than I do. I am pleased to have earned the endorsements of such organizations as the NRA, Human Life PAC, the National Federation of Independent Business, and just today it was announced I was endorsed by the Washington State Farm Bureau. But more importantly, I am honored by the support I receive each and every day from the people I represent. I ask for your vote so I can continue to advocate for Central Washington values in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Dan Newhouse. And also, on behalf of me, I just want to also thank the Latino Coalition for being here tonight. I think it's an important part of the dialogue.
Thank you, Sharon. Just left my questions in front of one of the candidates, but that's okay. I'm sure he wasn't looking.
I got a photographic memory.
Some of them were covered. I'll sort of leave them over here for a minute. We're going to go through in the traditional manner that each candidate will have a chance for an opening statement. We will take questions. Does anybody have a card they want to pass? Have you collected any? We, of course, are always prepared with some questions. And we will begin with the opening statements. We're going in the order that the two candidates were ranked as far as when they registered or when they actually filed for this position. And we will begin with Mr. Didier.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to the Latino Coalition for putting on this event. There's an old saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Now, you were told that this representative of ours was a conservative. Let me explain my stance on this. If you go through the voting records of the Freedom Index, he's got a 50%. Jamie Herrera Butler has a 60% rating. She's the highest of all of our congressional people in the state. Heritage Action for America, 57%. Conservative Review, 31%. Now, this is voting in with the Constitution of the United States of America. The last time I looked, a passing grade was 60%. He says he's a conservative, and he voted for the omnibus bill. Now, how many of you know what the omnibus bill was and is? It was passed last December. The omnibus bill fully funded Obamacare, fully funded Planned Parenthood with the increase, fully funded sanctuary cities, $1.6 billion to bring Syrian refugees into America, and most importantly, it stole $150 billion out of the Social Security fund that these people of the United States of America have earned and put into that and believed that it was going to be there for them. And what did they do with that $150 billion? They put it into the Social Security Disability Fund. And according to Breitbart News, what is the newest disability of our country? Qualifying for disability? You can't speak English.
Thank you. And we'll move on to Mr. McKinley for his opening statement.
Thank you. And I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Latino Coalition for putting this event on. I think many of you are going to be surprised tonight because I'm going to agree with Mr. Didier on a lot of things. I certainly agree with him on his view of our current congressman, Mr. Newhouse. I think Mr. Newhouse has sold his candidacy on false premises. In addition to not really being a conservative, he's not really held his campaign promises with respect to the Latino community. He promised the Latino community when he was running for office that he would support the DACA policy, and I think it was his fourth vote in Congress where he voted against it, and that's troubling. I admire Clint in a lot of ways. I think Clint is an honest politician. I think he's telling you what he truly believes, and I'm not sure I can say the same thing about our current congressman. Where I differ with Clint, I think, is not in what I think the problems we have are. It's in what the solutions to those problems are. I think Clint would agree with me that we've lost too many high-wage jobs, and we have too many people struggling to get by in this economy, and our poverty rate is too high. Where we would differ, though, is I look at that problem and I say, okay, why is that being caused? And I look at things like the fact that for the last 20 years, all of the economic gains from economic growth in this country have gone to a tiny percentage of people, of very wealthy individuals. I look at the fact that there are tens of millions of people working for huge, profitable corporations, multi-billion-dollar corporations that earn billions of dollars of profits every year. And these people are earning so little that they're dependent upon social programs like food benefits and housing benefits just to get by. And I believe that those two are connected. I believe that the concentration of wealth and the fact that these huge corporations won't pay their workers a living wage are the biggest problem we have. And I don't believe that the solution to that problem is more tax cuts at the top and less regulation.
Okay, thank you. It's kind of hard sometimes to get all this in the time allotted. Believe me, we know. We do have some questions from the audience. One of them coincides with a question we have prepared, and it deals with climate change. Our question was, the Arctic ice cap is melting faster than earlier predicted, and the accumulating effects of climate change seem to be growing. Do you believe that the burning of fossil fuels has contributed to global warming? And if so, what programs would you support to help mitigate its effects? If you do not agree, please explain your position on climate change, and we'll begin with Mr. Didier.
I can't deny climate change. Since the Earth was formed, the climate has been changing. And we once were a great ice cap right here. This was a glacier. And it was the Missoula floods that created the Columbia River Gorge. It melted. The only problem was mankind wasn't even on Earth yet. Now, are we contributing to a global warming effect? I don't think so. Is petroleum the cause of it? There has been story after story that volcanoes erupting put out more pollution than mankind has put out all combined. And the ice cap, there is studies and there are pictures showing the ice cap has grown this last winter enormously. These are differentials in scientific data. We have people pushing this for control and wealth. This is an agenda. And if you don't believe me, start reading the other side of the argument, please, because I read them both. And you've got to understand both sides of it. I'm a farmer. When I was raised in the basin, I faced temperatures of 121 degrees one day and 117, and I was about 10 years old. How many of those days have we had in the last 3, 4, 5 years? How many days over 100 have we had? And I truly believe the climate is what God wants it to be, because this is God's earth.
Thank you. And Mr. McKinley.
I'm not going to delve deeply into the science of climate change. The theory is that carbon dioxide and other gases trap heat, just the way your car traps heat when you leave your windows rolled up. I will note that, not being an expert in climate change, I'm forced to rely on the expertise of others to form my opinions. And when I look at the opinions of others, what I note is that the vast, vast majority of scientists who are warning that climate change is real and that it's caused by carbon dioxide emissions generated by industrial activity is overwhelming. And the climate skeptics are very few in number, and they tend to be funded by sources that have vast, vast amounts of money at stake in ensuring that the remaining hydrocarbon resources that are trapped in the earth are brought up and sold by the companies that are funding those skeptics. So I consider the sources, and on balance, I think I'm compelled to reach the conclusion that we're facing a serious problem across the globe, and that we are driving up global temperatures, and there are going to be serious consequences from driving up those temperatures. We are going to have population dislocations. We're going to have refugee problems. There are some who have argued that the Syrian conflict, in fact, was caused by droughts brought about by climate change. So I think we need to take it seriously, and we need to address it.
Thank you. It is hard to solve these problems in a minute and a half. I have another question from the audience that ties in with a second question. We'll go with you first, Mr. McKinley. The 4th Congressional District is comprised of rich agricultural industry. How would you address the issue of immigration, especially undocumented immigrants, while maintaining a robust agriculture industry?
Well, I think if you look at your current congressman's position, it's completely and totally incoherent. He has endorsed Donald Trump's presidential campaign. As was mentioned in the prior debate, Mr. Trump proposes to deport 11 million undocumented workers. That amounts to tens of thousands of people, and those people form the backbone of the agricultural workforce in the district. At the same time, he's trying to expand the H1, I think it's H1B2, I might be getting that wrong, visa program that brings in guest workers. I think we all need to understand that the vast majority of the current undocumented workers who are here in the 4th Congressional District came here under those programs and overstayed their visas. Those people also had children who are U.S. citizens, many of whom are, in their early 20s. To deport all of those kids' parents, in my view, and I know a lot of those kids because I've taught at the university and I work in the district court, and so I've met a lot of these kids. And to deport their parents, to me, just seems to be the most cruel and inhumane thing that we could possibly do. And for what benefit? To completely disrupt the agriculture sector, to completely disrupt the workforce? I just don't see how it solves any problems. And I see on a very personal level how it creates really, really sad situations. So I'm a strong supporter of the comprehensive immigration reform bill that passed the Senate, the so-called Gang of Eight bill, that would provide these individuals in the district a pathway to citizenship.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Didier, how do you balance these two needs?
Well, first of all, let's ask the audience. Are you fearful for your life today in America? With all the terrorist attacks that are happening all over America and the fact that we don't know who's come into here? I'm glad you're not, because we shouldn't be living in fear. But you better be a little worried about what's come across the borders. The first thing in our immigration is, first and foremost, secure the borders. Because if we don't secure the border, why are we even talking about this? We are not a nation unless we have secure borders. We are over-inundating our education system, our social welfare system. Every system we have is being taxed to the limit. And that's why your taxes are going up, is because we can't afford this. We are almost 20 trillion in the hole. So first and foremost, let's secure our borders. Let's make sure we know who's coming in. And then after we secure the borders, then we move on to the next step. And that is a pathway to citizenship. As long as we don't have lawbreakers and people have been here a long time, they need to be given the opportunity to become American citizens.
Thank you. And Mr. McKinley. Oh, I'm sorry. My next question also is just a follow-up on
I'll
what
talk all night long if you let me.
No, as a follow-up, and you mentioned it on immigration policy. Do I understand then, my question was, do you support any kind of path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants who are now living in the United States? If so, what criteria would you require? And if not, how do you think the country should deal with this issue? So just elaborate a little bit more about what you said.
Well, in the last campaign, I said that we need to give the opportunity for these people, as long as they haven't broken our laws. And one of the laws they broke is they came here undocumented, and they stayed here undocumented. So there's going to have to be a penalty. What that is, I don't know. And as a single congressman, I'm not going to be able to dictate and tell you what it's going to be. Believe me, you know how Congress works. But if we don't secure our borders, this is going to do no good to even talk about this. Because all we're going to do is keep having this influx of people coming to America, and we'll never resolve the problem. Because you're going to have a constant barrage of new immigrants of how you're going to handle them. So if they're here, and they have broken a law because they're here illegally, they're going to have to pay a fine and get in line and go through the process that all the other immigrants to the United States have went through. And that is, you learn how to speak English, you take the test, and you become a U.S. citizen. Plain and simple. It's worked for so many years. But now all of a sudden, we just want to grant amnesty. And that is not right to the people who came here legally. Let's put a precedent here. If you came here legally and you did it right, why should you be penalized for people who won't?
Thank you. And now it's your turn again.
Thank you. The first thing I'd like to point out is that it isn't really an even playing field. If you come here from Cuba, all you have to do is get on the beach in Miami and you're not allowed to be deported. So there are different rules depending on where you come from. I agree with Clint that we do have to secure the borders. And the comprehensive immigration bill that passed the Senate by 68 to 32 margin, bipartisan bill, does provide an additional 40,000 border guards to secure the border. It also provides a pathway to citizenship to long-term undocumented workers who are here from Mexico. And those are really the people we're talking about in the 4th Congressional District. I mean, let's be realistic. What we're talking about is huge numbers of people living in Mattawa and Sunnyside, in these farming communities between Tri-Cities and Yakima. And, you know, as I said, I know these people. And the humane thing to do is to allow them to stay. Now, I agree with Clint. If someone, you know, slips across the border and commits felonies, yeah, you know, we need to get rid of that person. But for the most part, who we're talking about are peaceful citizens who have raised their children, have tried to do right by their families, have done the best they can with a very meager resources. And you know, if you read the details of the bill that passed the Senate, the only thing we need to pass that is the House of Representatives to change hands. It's going to be signed by a Democratic president, and it's highly supported by the Senate. It's simply the House of Representatives that's holding it up. It provides enormous economic benefits to the United States to pass that legislation.
Thank you. And now you get to go first.
Okay.
This is a question, again, that coincides with one we had prepared. Polls show overwhelming support for some changes in our gun laws, such as universal background checks, expanded list of people who can now purchase guns, limits on semi-automatic weapons, and ammunition purchases. What legislation, if any, would you support that could help reduce the gun violence in our country?
The short answer is I would support legislation that worked, and I would not support legislation that didn't work. And I think there's a lot of legislation that's being proposed that is not going to solve any problems. However, I think we have to use our common sense here when we're talking about having people on the terrorist watch list and felons be able to buy guns with no intervention whatsoever, which is the current status of the law. Right now, a private seller at either a gun show or over the internet or on Craigslist doesn't need to check you out in any way, shape, or form to sell you an AR-15. You can just go buy it. And what that means is anyone with a felony conviction or anyone who's on the no-fly list can get their hands on those kinds of weapons without anybody breaking any laws. It seems to me that it's a common sense solution that we change the law to prevent those sales from happening. Now, you know, I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe there's an individual right, the Supreme Court has held, there's an individual right to possess arms. But there is no individual right to sell those arms to suspected terrorists and felons. And so I think that's where we can draw the line. And is that going to solve all our problems? Clearly not. But I think it's a step in the right direction.
Thank you. And Mr. Didier.
This is a complete failure of our government. If you look at the running of the arms that Holder and Obama were involved in that killed the border agent, one of them was just discovered in the France shooting. Our government was selling arms. And then they had the leads on that shooter in Florida. He was reported from the gun shop, very suspicious character, and nothing was done. This is not a gun problem. This is a society problem. Thomas Jefferson said, "The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is, as a last resort, to protect themselves against a tyranny in governing." And that's where we're at today, folks. We got a government that people are above the law. We just witnessed it. And what happened here with the server? Caught red-handed, still running for president. If the law does not apply to each and every person the same way, then what is our republic good for? We have to be equal in the rule of law, and right now we're not.
Thank you. We have another question, and this deals, I guess, with the financial side of things. It says, what legislation, and we're going to you first, Mr. Didier, will you propose or support to restore financial strength and balance the budget? What is your position on the Federal Reserve?
The Federal Reserve was created on Jekyll Island by a bunch of rich people. And it has no accountability to anybody, not even Congress. So they can print and they can do whatever they want with this Federal Reserve and with no government oversight. That's not a healthy country. So we need to audit the Federal Reserve. And then we need to eliminate the Federal Reserve. And we need to get back on the gold standard. Because that is the true way to determine the wealth or the value of your money. Right now, we don't know what our money is even worth. Our inflation is going up dramatically. Things are costing more. And this mic is getting louder as I talk. So I don't know. I'm not raising my voice. I'm not angry. I'm just trying to state the facts here. I would propose that we really look at all our agencies, because the agencies, they're creating laws to regulate us farmers out here in the basin. And I'm a farmer. I don't know if you realize or not, but I farm 1,100 acres with my wife and my sons. And we are trying to make a living off the farm. And we are being hit with burdensome regulation and higher taxes, as all of you are with this rise in our gasoline tax. And it's going to go up again. You're going to be paying 71 cents a gallon soon for state and federal taxes for a gallon of gasoline. And I'm saying, who's the biggest profiter? Is it the petroleum industry or is it our government?
Thank you. And it's your chance to answer those questions.
Can you repeat the question for me?
Well,
please?
sure. What legislation would you propose or support to restore financial strength and balance to the budget, and your position on the Federal Reserve System?
Well, I think the most pressing problem we have in restoring the federal budget is to regrow the middle class. What produces a strong economy is a broadly shared prosperity. And, you know, if you look at economic history beginning at about the end of the Second World War until today, what you see is, beginning at the Second World War till about the mid-'80s, incomes, wages for workers rose pretty much in lockstep with increases in productivity. And then sometime around the Reagan administration, I won't blame Reagan because Carter made some tax decisions. I think there's some bipartisan failures involved here. But starting about the 1980s, that relationship really broke down, and wages stagnated in the middle class. And ever since then, we have seen this concentration of wealth continue forward to the point where 16,000 families in the United States control more wealth than the bottom two-thirds. Now, there's a number that doesn't get a lot of talk about in the press, and it's the percentage of corporate revenues that are paid out to workers. A few decades ago, that percentage was about 80%. And now that percentage is about 75%. And it's that 5% that, in my view, represents the difference between a prosperous middle class and a middle class and a vast workforce that's dependent upon public benefits just to get by. Those are the numbers we need to change. That's where we need to focus our attention.
Thank you. I'll switch gears a little bit. Trade has been in the news a lot lately. In Washington State, among the 50 states, we rank 4th in the amount of exports. We rank 13th in the imports that we take in, and we rank number 1 for a positive trade balance. With that in mind, would you support the ratification of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, also known as the TTP?
No.
Okay, let's see, you went second?
Sure.
So you'll go first.
Okay.
Sorry, and then we'll be right to you.
No surprise in my answer now.
Well, keep us in suspense.
I think these trade agreements are tricky because there's going to be trade, right? We're going to import goods and we're going to sell goods, and a lot of high-paying Washington jobs at Boeing and Microsoft and other places are dependent upon that trade. And frankly, a lot of our agricultural exports are dependent upon that trade. So there's going to be trade. And if you don't write the rules for it, then someone else will. So the fear is that if the United States doesn't participate in the TPP, that the rules for trade around the Pacific Rim will be written by China. And I don't think that it's in any of our interest that China writes the rules for trade around the Pacific Rim. That said, there have been some really crazy results from trade deals that we've entered into in the past that I don't think anybody in this room are comfortable with. For example, the promoters of the XL pipeline in Canada, which would have sold Canadian tar sand oil to China and transported it across America by seizing farmers' land through eminent domain. They have now sued the United States government under the provisions of NAFTA for billions and billions of dollars. The provisions of the trade agreements that allow that kind of vulnerability to the U.S. taxpayer, in my mind, any trade agreement that contains those types of provisions is unacceptable.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Didier.
No, because we're dealing with 13 nations wrapping everything up into a one-size-fits-all. And so what do we get? We get less jobs, we get companies moving overseas, and we're being manipulated by currencies of countries like Vietnam that's already devalued their currency, so they get to export more than they import. See, every trade deal we get in, countries do this. They manipulate their currency, and then they're on the upper hand of the trade deal. And we're losing jobs, and we're losing industries because of this. But we're so quickly just wanting to export our coal. And funny, we don't want to burn our coal here where we have the cleanest coal plants in the world that put almost zero emissions out, but we'll send it to China, and they're trying to put ports together right now so we can increase the rails. 13 trains are going through the Pasco rail yard a day. 200 cars. Think about this natural resource that we're sending away. And we have the most cleanest burning plants in the world. And we're going to ship it over to China and let them pollute the air. Now, this makes no sense. Because if we're concerned about the environment, then why are we shipping it to a country that doesn't have any concern for their environment? This is what we got to do, folks. We got to put common sense back into government, because right now there is none. And we've got politicians that are lining their pockets with money in order to get the upper hand and to be reelected. That's all it's about, is getting reelected.
Okay, thank you. And now this time you get to go first about another issue that stays with us and without much being resolved. A recent projection said Social Security can pay full benefits until 2037. Some of you are probably young enough that you're planning on that. When funding would drop down to 76% of full benefits, many suggestions have been made that could help secure the future of Social Security, such as raising the retirement age, increasing the taxable income limit, the use of a means test. Would you support any of those suggestions, or do you have other suggestions you might support?
Well, like I said in my opening statement, that was one of the parts of the omnibus bill. They stole $150 billion out of the Social Security Retirement Fund. Now, this fund was funded by the people of this country who paid into it thinking they were going to get their retirement money. And they transferred it to the Social Security Disability Fund because it's out of money. The Disability Fund has tripled in applicants since 2006. And it's rising every year because it's the new welfare program. And they talk about the disabilities. They're not disabilities. We're allowing people to get away with just getting funds without working. This is not my call. Whose call is this? The people that earned the Social Security, the ones that are getting the checks now. I hope to get a check, but I'm not counting on it. That's why I said in the last campaign, I'm willing to keep paying into Social Security. It is our moral obligation to make sure those people that paid in get their money out. But let me pay into my own retirement fund at the same time, tax-free in and tax-free out, so that I'm guaranteed a retirement fund, because this Social Security, they're robbing the funds, They're shifting them over to other areas. It's not going to be there for you, flat out. Don't count on it. Get yourself put together for your own retirement fund and demand Congress let you do that tax-free in and tax-free out.
Thank you. Mr. McKinley.
Sure. I would support all of those measures to fully fund Social Security. Social Security has been one of the most successful programs in the history of the United States government. It's lifted tens of millions of seniors out of poverty. We have every reason to expand Social Security benefits. Right now, I think it would be an economically healthy thing to do. And all of those suggestions, I think, would stabilize and fully fund Social Security toward the future. There's one thing that I'd like to bring up, though, and I know I sound like a broken clock here, but, think about it. If a company like Walmart, pays millions of workers below subsistence wages and puts billions of dollars into the pockets of its senior management and owners, if we were able to create incentives so that instead of paying that money to their senior managers and owners, that it was instead paid out to their employees as wages, let's think about what that would do to the Social Security program. Well, we all know that Social Security caps out somewhere north of $100,000 a year. So the vast majority of that money that's paid to the senior management and the owners is not taxed for Social Security purposes. However, if it's diverted and paid as wages to all the people who work for Walmart, then it's all getting taxed as Social Security benefits. And that's a great way to stabilize the Social Security program, is to increase the wages of the people who are working at the bottom of the system. Now, there's an argument that people make that you can't raise wages at Walmart because it'll drive up inflation. Well, tell that to Costco. Same business, higher wages, better benefits. They seem to be doing fine with it.
Okay, thank you. We'll kind of switch to the other end, and we'll talk about student debt, though when I was looking this up, I saw that 36,000 people who are collecting Social Security have money deducted for student debts they still owe. So it can stay with you for a lifetime. Right now, 43 million Americans owe over $1.2 trillion, second only to home mortgages for debt in this country. Many factors have contributed to this. What steps would you support to help reverse this trend? Allow for refinancing of loans at lower rates, better counseling when applying for loans, more money for Pell Grants, closer scrutiny of for-profit colleges, or any other ideas you might have. And we'll start with you, Mr. McKinley.
Well, the first thing I would do is I would support Hillary Clinton's proposal made, I think, today or yesterday to make state university and state colleges free or tuition free for families earning under $125,000 a year. If you look back at the end of World War II, when the GIs came home from Japan and from Europe, the level of subsidies that were paid into state and state universities were astronomical. To go to college at the University of California system was free. What's steadily happened over the years is that the amount of tuition paid by students has become a larger and larger percentage, and the amount of tuition paid by taxpayers has become a smaller and smaller percentage. Now, you might think this doesn't affect you, but it does, because the engine of growth in our economy has always been young people graduating from high school and getting good jobs, or graduating from college and getting good jobs, and then going out and forming households, buying cars, buying appliances, doing all the things that people who just started families do, which it drives a ton of consumer spending, which, remember, is 70% of our economy. Now you have all of these kids trapped under $1 trillion worth of debt, and they're living with their parents. So that's why our economy is stuck in first gear. It's because we have tens of millions of jobs that barely pay subsistence wages, and all of these kids going to college come out with a lifetime of debt. Those people can't drive economic growth. It'll never work unless we give them some relief.
Thank you. I think we have time for 2 more questions.
I didn't get the answer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I sincerely apologize.
I know.
I'm glad you spoke up.
I'm just a little mouse in the corner here. I'm hardly seen. But, ladies and gentlemen, maybe we need to reevaluate our college system. If these professors will give up their salaries, I'll go along with Hillary Clinton's idea. But these professors are making hundreds and thousands of dollars, and they're filling our minds full of mush. And where are these hundreds of thousands of jobs that you're talking about? I don't see them. I see people, when you go to the big cities, there's people all over the streets. Homeless people. This concerns me because we're not trying to build up America. We're trying to take down America through the regulations. And honestly, you think about the education bubble, you think about the housing bubble, ladies and gentlemen, these are about ready to go boom. And they're going to be handed right into your lap, the taxpayers, the Social Security recipients. You see, when you take those two big figures and then you add in the unfunded liabilities of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and our debt, we are, and it was reported, and it is actual, $222 trillion. If we want to make true to our promises to all these people. Now you start adding up all these failed education, you add up the failed housing. If these kids go to college and they take on that responsibility to go to college, they pay their debt. Because it's nobody else created that debt than they did. And if they go there with a false promise of a great job and they don't get it, then they hold that college responsible for not that job opportunity being there.
Thank you. We'll do two more questions, question 9 and 10, but I'm going to give you question 10 first, so you each have a little chance to think about it. And then I'll quickly give you question 9 so that it won't become your question 10. Question 10 will be, what didn't we bring up that you wish we would have? What issue do you think is important that you would like the American voting public to be aware of that you want to address? And in case it was this issue, this is question number 9, so you'll have to think up of something else for number 10.
Okay.
What is your position on foreign policy, particularly in regard to military deployment around the world? And let's see, you're 9, so yes, you're going first on odd number questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the problems we have with America is we're trying to be the police force for the world, and it has ran us into a heck of a debt. We are trying to be, and Thomas Jefferson said, we are the friends of liberty everywhere, but guardians of ours alone. And this is what we got to get back to. If we have a conflict, and we have a conflict today, but we can't follow the Constitution in this conflict because there's not a country to declare war against. You see, we've gotten away from that. The last time we declared war was World War II. And we had a clear-cut plan for victory, and we went in and we won. It was a hard-fought battle, but America won. We prevailed. Today, the War Powers Act, they handed over to the president as much as Congress has handed over the purse strings and the Senate handed over the treaty agreements. They neutered themselves. They have no power. When you hand those purse strings over to the president, he does whatever he wants, and he is. And if you want a government in complete control of everything in your life, do that, because he has told our school districts, either you comply with that transgender bathroom rule, or we will retain your funding, and we will sue you. Now, those are not his funds. The federal government doesn't create wealth. It only utilizes the wealth they take from you to redistribute. We need more of it in our pocket. Then we can create the jobs, the innovation, creation, and the rebuilding of America. We can do this.
Thank you. And Mr. McKinley.
I just want to take a quick issue with the government doesn't create wealth. The government created all the dams up and down the Columbia and Snake Rivers, which have generated billions and billions of dollars of agriculture. I would say that was a pretty good investment. But the question was about foreign policy. I think we have to recognize that our adversary is really not a state, it's an ideology. And when we attempt to put boots on the ground or fly drones around or engage in traditional conflict, it hasn't been particularly successful. I wouldn't regard America's military involvement in Iraq as particularly successful. I wouldn't regard America's military involvement in the Middle East as particularly successful. But let's be smart about who our adversaries are. Our adversaries are a radical cult who wants to present themselves as representatives to a religion of 1 billion people. They want to present themselves as representatives of Islam. At the same time that they want to present themselves as representatives, they consistently attack Islamic people. So I think the most important thing we can do to discredit this ideology is to not allow them to control that narrative, to not allow them to present themselves as the representatives of a religion of 1 billion people who they're consistently attacking.
Thank you. We'll go to this last question, and you'll start first. And so you'll end up with 3 minutes to say whatever you want to say to the voters out there. So question number 10 would be, what issue didn't we bring up or discuss here tonight that you would like to bring before the voters and share your thoughts about?
Well, the 3 main issues that I decided to run for Congress, that I wanted to run for Congress on, were raising incomes at the lower level, reforming how we fund education, and passing a comprehensive immigration policy with a pathway to citizenship. So fortunately, I've been able to talk to speak to those issues tonight. But I would like to add one sort of more thought about that, and that is, if we get this wrong, if we don't choose the right policies, then the problems that bedevil us will continue to bedevil us. And these problems are nonpartisan in nature. It's the solutions, or the purported solutions, or the way we describe them, or the way we frame these issues that politicians try to couch as a Democratic solution versus a Republican solution. And Clint's very right. The reason they do that is because they want to keep their jobs. It's because they want to get reelected. And so the challenge, I think, to the public is to think deeply about what we really consider to be the reasons we're seeing this hollowing out of the middle class, the reasons we're seeing the economic difficulties that we've had over the last 20 years. And only then can we stop focusing on parties and personalities and focus on policies, because it's the policies that decide the quality of our lives and how our nation moves forward together.
Thank you. And Mr. Didier?
Well, first off, I'd just like to say, yes, the dams were a government-funded project, but it was the people of America that built them. The government did not build them. It was the hardworking people of America that sweat, died on those dams. There's bodies in that dam, and they were not government. You see, we got to realize one thing, folks. When we had 13 colonies, they created the federal government. The federal government didn't create the 13 colonies. And the federal government was supposed to be limited and defined in its responsibilities. And today, they're in every integral part, much as my opponent stated. But what's he doing about it? He's playing the game. I plan to go back and be a game changer. Because if we don't unify Americans, and I don't care where you're from, I've got a Hispanic son-in-law, Hilario. I'm going to have a from Moldova, a daughter-in-law. And these are great people. But we're Americans. I don't care where you come from. We're Americans. If this country goes down, we all go down. We got to unite. And we've got to take our country back from these elitists, these globalists. They want to take us into this new world order. And they're doing it very efficiently. If we don't stand as a united nation and unify, America will no longer exist.
Okay. Without breaking your train of thought too much, you have another minute and a half to say anything else you might want to say.
I'd like you to go to my website. It's clintforcongress.org, because there seems to be a lot of people out there wanting to profit from my name, and they've bought up my other sites because I didn't keep them renewed. So it's now clintforcongress.org. So please go to that and join me every Tuesday morning on ACN, the American Christian Network. I have a radio program, and I'm having candidates on there all the time, and you can listen to them. It's on at 8:30 in the morning, and it's a half-hour show. Please join me and listen in. And then if you have questions, mail them in or email them in. I'd love to address them. I also have the Washington Patriots PAC I created to help constitutional conservative Christians get into office. You see, this country was founded on a Judeo-Christian belief. God Almighty and George Washington was the biggest prayer. And he prayed to God before going into battles. Lee Chrisman, a neighbor out there, prayed every time before he flew his B-25 over Europe that he prayed for the people he was dropping the bombs on. He wasn't praying for himself. These are our heroes. This is our time. We're alive. This is a very important time. Either we remain a sovereign nation, or you will no longer have your Bill of Rights. You won't have to worry about your Second Amendment, your First Amendment. They're all gone. And you'll be living by a new set of rules. I want America to stay true to not only my children, but to yours and to all our posterity from here to the end of time. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mr. McKinley.
Yes, I'd like to thank the League again. I'd like to thank the Latino Caucus for holding this event. I'd like to thank Clint for showing up, because if it hadn't been for Clint showing up, I don't think I would have got the opportunity to address the people, and I don't think I would have gotten the opportunity to be on public access television. And since I don't own a radio station and I don't have my own radio program, I have.
Get on there $1,000, you can get on there.
Okay. Well, I thought you'd invite me on, since you're having politicians on, and we can talk shop about how Dan Newhouse is not representing any of us. And you know, Clint's telling you the truth. Dan Newhouse runs around the district saying that he voted to eliminate Obamacare, and he voted to eliminate funding for Planned Parenthood. And the fact of the matter is he did. Those were show votes. They were votes that were going into bills that were never going to go anywhere, that weren't going to accomplish anything, and everyone knew it. And when the time came to actually vote, where it was actually going to matter in the omnibus bill, he voted for the omnibus bill. And lo and behold, Planned Parenthood is funded, and lo and behold, Obamacare is funded. Now, I would have also voted for the omnibus bill, but not because I was lying to my constituents, but because I think Planned Parenthood should be funded. And I think that Obamacare should be funded. I think, you know, tens of thousands of people rely on the Affordable Care Act for their health insurance in this district, and they need that health insurance. And, you know, tens of thousands of young women rely on Planned Parenthood for their birth control, and they need access to that family planning. So like I said at the start, I think we see the same problems, we just see different solutions. And America has to decide, and the voters of the 4th District have to decide, which solutions do they think will actually work, instead of simply basing their votes on which side they, you know, associate, which team they think they should be on.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank both Mr. Didier and Mr. McKinley. As they said, we have to have at least 2 candidates to show up. So that was a good thing, and hopefully you've learned something about both candidates. Hopefully either these 2 or 2 others, that the top 2 vote getters, no matter what their party affiliation, will be on the ballot in November. So let's give them a round of applause for coming. As you know, we have a large geographical district, or geographically this is a very large district. It should be about equal, people-wise, with the other ones. I want to especially thank Mike Charbonneau with Richland City View for setting this up and making it possible tonight. For those of you that are here, tell your friends they can watch it on Charter's public access station, and on Richland's station, which is 192, and in Pasco it's 191, and it will also be on the internet, on YouTube. So people can have a chance to watch this that weren't here tonight. Next week we will be doing a different version of this in Pasco. It will be at the police training facility at 204 West Clark, which, if you go way into Pasco, it's on the corner of Clark and First Avenue. And we will be featuring the 2 races in the 16th District, Position 1 and Position 2 for the representative, and the representative for District 9, where there are 3 candidates running. So hopefully those of you that maybe live in the 16th District, or if you have people that you know. I don't know if anybody here is from the 9th District. We kind of get chopped up here in the Tri-Cities, which is not a bad thing. We have more to represent us. And I've also learned that next Thursday, ours in Pasco is Wednesday, and next Thursday in Benton City, they are going to be hosting the 16th District candidates. So people would have a chance to see them out there too, and it'll be at the Kiona Benton High School. Was that at 7 o'clock? Okay. Oh, okay, so you can get a good seat if you go early. If there are any first-timers in this state who still haven't registered to vote, you can still go in person to the auditor's office and register to vote up until Monday, July 25th. Then we hope you make the effort to become informed on the issues and be sure and return your ballot either by mail or drop it off on one of the sites, and they'll be listed on your ballot when you receive it in the mail by August 2nd. And don't be afraid to urge your friends, your kids, your neighbors, the waitress at the restaurant. Ask them if they're registered to vote and encourage them to vote, because I think we really have to try and get our voter participation up in our 2 counties and this nation as a whole. So hopefully the people here care enough to do that. And with that, we are finished, and people can go home and digest about all the problems that are facing us, but there should be solutions out there. Thank you very much.